of the Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship here at the University of Maryland. So I'm a staff member, but our mission at the Dingman Center is to help students launch their ventures. So we run a portfolio of what we call in higher ed extracurricular programs and activities and events, things you students do not for credit, sort of outside of the classroom. And these programs are meant to help students learn the business skills of launching a venture. So we work with students from all across campus. We're housed in the business school, but we work with any major. What I'll talk about throughout today's discussion is our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion at the center. We are in the 5th year of an initiative committed to gender diversity called the Ladies First Initiative. And then we also have an initiative within our pitch competition, which is a Shark Tank style competition, committed to solving the challenges with systemic racism. So I'll thread some of that information and sort of how we do it and why it's important throughout this talk. But that's me. I've been at the center for 7 years. I've been on campus 12 years, so I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much for taking time to come share your experiences. Next, I'm going to ask Lori to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Laurie Brewer. I am responsible for tech talent recruiting for M&T Bank, actually specifically to M&T Tech, which is how you'll see us branded. I've been in that role about 3 years, designed the technology development program, which launched in 2019, so we're in our 2nd year of the program. I spend quite a bit of time building strategy around diversity for not only recruiting, but also the programs that I'm responsible for, tech development, as well as our intern program in technology, and working across multiple divisions. So I'm really excited about being here. This is our 2nd year with Technichat. So
thank you so much. And our last panelist is Christina.
Hello, my name is Christina Ram. I'm a senior software engineer at Wayfair. I work on a team that actually supports tooling for engineers working within the company, and which includes potentially moving over to open source. I am more or less somewhat involved in various DEI initiatives throughout the company, mostly on the observing side, I would say, for the most part, but I've been getting involved a little bit more lately, so here I am.
Amazing. So we have 3 wonderful panelists here today to, share about their experiences and teach us more about diversity and inclusion as, their life work relates to it. So I'm just going to be asking some questions so we can hear your insight, and any of you 3 can feel free to answer and jump in. So the first question is, how were you introduced to tech, and how did you know that you wanted to pursue this as your career path?
I'll start, and I'm pretty sure Holly and Christina will have some insight as well. I worked for Citigroup for several years before I joined M&T. I was always in operations management in different roles from a leadership perspective, and I applied for a role in technology. I wasn't once 100% certain I was qualified, but I didn't really care. I really felt like it was an interesting role for me. So I was offered the position and took the position to head up a small tech team for test automation, not super exciting, but tech transformation. And I fell in love with technology. I felt that, to me, that's where innovation happens. It's what enables our bank, as well as enabled the rest of the organization that I was working in at the time, to be successful. It was a little bit different as a woman in tech. We were probably accounting for about 25%, maybe 20% of the organization at the time. So definitely was a shift for me. Operations was predominantly women, technology was predominantly men. But I've now been in technology for about 9 years, and I cannot imagine being anywhere else.
I can jump in next. So in my case, I actually originally went to college and was going to pursue veterinary medicine. I actually very quickly got frustrated with having to memorize as much as I did because I was more or less a child of the internet. So to me, it's if I don't know something, I go look it up. So I was also taking a computer science course, and both my parents are very technical. My father more on the software side, my mother with electrical engineering. So I realized I had an affinity for this. I was pretty good at it. It looked like a good prospect, and I was really frustrated with the actual classes the other classes I was taking towards what I thought was going to be my major. So I switched and more or less haven't looked back.
Great, and I sort of have a different experience because I am working with technical students. I am not necessarily a technologist, but I got, the tech companies I work with are mainly through our angel investor network. We have an angel investor network that invests in tech companies in the area. And I work with them usually on their go-to-market strategies, pitching their business. So I'm sort of, I guess, a supporter or an ally or a helper of technologists. I am not one myself. And I would say that our commitment at the center has been empowering more female students from the STEM side of campus to think about entrepreneurship, empower them to be confident in solving problems and innovating. So I'm more of a support of the technologists.
Thank you so much, all three of you, for sharing. I think these responses definitely show that, there's not one linear path to get into tech. I know that sometimes there's this fear of, oh, if I haven't been doing this for 10 years already, if I wasn't, coming out of the womb, like coding up Python or Java or whatever it is, that I'm not cut for this, which definitely is not the case. There's so many different paths and angles that you can approach technology. And I think these different perspectives definitely showed that. Okay. So our next question is, what is the most rewarding aspect of your day-to-day job? How are you able to see the tangible results of your work in the community around you?
So there's a lot for me. I'm very fortunate. I work with the technology development program, and all of the candidates within the program. We have about 120 TDPs in our environment today. For me, what is most rewarding is seeing them be successful. So watching them develop and evolve and introduce new ideas and solutions and code into our environment that will be used by our customers. But I think one of the things that's super important to our program is community. It's important to M&T Bank, and it's also very much important to our TDP program. So we have a group of TDPs aligned to community and social impact, and they are building out ideas and ways to actively participate in improving the communities they work and live in. They've done a great job of continuing to support virtual volunteer efforts in this bizarre world that we live in today. But I think that's probably what's most rewarding, is seeing them be successful and knowing that I have this small role in helping them to build their careers.
I would say for me, one of the things we talk about with our female founders is peer-to-peer mentorship and peer-to-peer empowerment. And I would say that's really fulfilling for me. I mean, our mission is education. So anytime you see a student, a light bulb go off and they understand, a topic you're teaching them, whether it's imposter syndrome or what a profit and loss statement are, that's always very valuable. But I think for me is when I see the peer-to-peer connections and seeing young founders, because that's who I work with, young technologists, supporting one another, encouraging one another, because that's how they'll grow. I mean, they can hear me give a spiel, in the classroom 3 days a week, and that's fine. And they'll learn from that. But when they start really supporting one another, encouraging one another, and wanting to see each other succeed, that's pretty fulfilling for me.
I think for me, as I mentioned before, my position largely involves supporting other engineers, not in like day-to-day things that they need, but in actually building tools and platforms for them that support what they do from day to day. And I really enjoy that, because although ultimately, you know, everything every engineer does is supposed to, you know, help the company, and it does help the company and help on our overall mission, it's also really rewarding to see a lot of the frustrations that my job is to get rid of frustrations to some extent, is the way I look at it. And I love that. Like, I really hate working on something and being stuck with a tool, especially if it's a company tool that is not fit to purpose or that has big problems, and the fact that I get to go in and fix those things is awesome. I love it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I think like something that kind of was a common theme between all three of these responses is that it's not just, you know, what you can do to advance yourself, but also seeing how you can contribute to your larger team, to the larger community. And that's what gives you like that bigger sense of fulfillment, which is really awesome. Okay, so the next question is, what is one of the biggest challenges you have faced in the tech field?
I've got a pretty quick and easy one. Actually, honestly, it's always been getting interviews. The various times when I've been hunting for jobs, no one has wanted to give me a frickin' interview half the time. And I actually don't know why. I don't know if it's because obviously my name is very female presenting. I don't know if it's because they just don't see anything shiny enough on my resume. It's a very frustrating thing that I know a lot of people encounter too.
So, Christina, I think that's interesting because you're not the first person I've heard say that. I personally look for women when I'm reviewing resumes. I think that's one of the things, and I know one of our tech recruiters also on this call listening in, and we have increased the women in our TDP programs exponentially from 2019 to 2020 and then 2021. But I agree with you. I mean, that was a big challenge for me coming into technology. I had an interest, but nobody really wanted to talk to me. And so I happened to just make this connection that said, hey, you'd be great for this role. And I interviewed. But you're absolutely right. I think that's always been a challenge. I think my biggest challenge in technology was knowing my value and feeling comfortable negotiating for salaries, feeling comfortable leaning in. And I think that's probably the most important advice I can give anybody who is early in their career is know your value, state your value, and hold true to that value. And feel free when you're communicating that at interviews and on your resume. I think sometimes women hold back a little bit, and we shouldn't.
Yeah, I would echo what Lori said. It really is painful to watch some of these young college grads who are female, non-binary, just undervalue themselves because the males don't. And I see it, and I coach interviews, I coach students, and it's hard. It's hard to see that, but I don't see it as much as I used to, and I'm not on the recruiting side. So I'm hoping that's changing, because I think that systems are now a little bit better to support females. And I'd say another challenge I see, because I work with venture investing, I get real frustrated because there's proven research, and you see it when you're in these rooms with these pitches, that women get different questions than men. And they get the question, why are you qualified to launch this business 50 times more than a male presenter? And we've tracked this with one of our researchers. And so that's a challenge that I talk to the allies about. I talk to the investors about it. I'm like, you're asking them questions, you're grilling into them in a different way. And it's nuanced sometimes, but it puts a presenter, whether they're male or female, on the defensive. And so that's a challenge that we've been working on probably about 6 to 12 months. We're trying to talk to more of our investors and faculty about how they question underrepresented minorities.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's sad to hear that, like someone said in the chat, it's 2020 and we're still experiencing these struggles. But I think the first step to sort of addressing that and overcoming that is, understanding that it exists. And, even weekends like Technichat, when we're all coming together in recognizing the strength in non-binary individuals and women in STEM, is sort of a step in the right direction, I think. So it is sad and frustrating to know that this is sort of the world that we live in, but definitely we are taking steps to overcome it. And this should be, tangible proof of that in a way. Okay, I know this was sort of touched on, but I know this is a question that I and many other people also have. So have any of you struggled with low confidence or imposter syndrome, and how do you overcome it?
I absolutely have, and I actually have a really sad little anecdote from that. This year is the first year that I participated and actually been picked for. I participated in a conference and been picked for panels. And so the very first one that I attended, I caught myself after a few weeks undervaluing the conference itself because they picked me as a panelist. I didn't expect to be picked at all. And so apparently my self-worth in terms of what I could put out there was so low that I was like, well, is this a real conference? Like, how long has this been around? Like, how useful is this going to be? And once I caught that, it was a little easy to rectify and be like, okay, you can't base your judgment of the conference this way. But that was the only thing I had because I didn't know much about it. And it was really sad when I figured that out. It's sad that it went on that long too. There's a few weeks of me doubting that.
So go
Go
ahead,
ahead, Holly.
No. I was in our Ladies First Founders course, we teach sort of these archetypes of imposter syndrome. And I would say the one that I kind of struggle with the most is it would sort of borderline on perfectionist or superwoman archetype, because I'm not great at saying when I don't know something or when I need help with something, and I see that as a weakness, or see that as a flaw, and that can really hinder your growth, especially as you move into leadership positions. If you can't learn how to delegate or ask for help or take constructive criticism, those things are tough. But it's all about confidence, and I think just experience, breeds confidence. And so, like, you all coming to a weekend like this, all these little things are going to add up to overcoming them. But I would say that I don't want, I'm always afraid as a woman, I guess, men are too, but afraid to admit when I don't know something or admit when I can't do something. And, there's ways to approach that in, the right way without sounding like you don't know something, and I think I've had to learn the most about that.
I think that's the hardest part is accepting that we can't do it all. And we feel like if we don't do it all, then we're not capable, right? We're not good enough. I think that's a big challenge. And I feel that kind of goes back to knowing your value, because you're always doubting yourself. And it does take a little bit of time. One of the things I think is really important is that you have other women in your organization or in your group, at school or wherever that may be, that empower and uplift you. And I'll be honest, I've worked for large global organizations, and you don't see that as much as you see when I moved to a regional bank, which became like this group of almost like a family and a community, and the women work together, not against one another. And I think that makes a huge difference.
I would definitely agree with that. In my experience as a computer science major, finding those communities of people that I can surround myself with has been a really big factor in, like understanding my own worth as a computer scientist. And I feel like I would definitely encourage that for all of you as well. If you ever struggle with imposter syndrome, finding that core group of people that can uplift you and that you don't compare yourself to, but you see your success, you see their success, and you're like, oh, I can also be successful. I think that's very, very important. Okay. Another question we had is, what efforts have your companies taken to promote diversity/inclusion, and what are some steps that you hope to see others take?
So in higher ed, there's a lot of programs, that exist to address this. At Dingman, we started our journey with addressing gender. And so we formed the Ladies First Founders Initiative 6 years ago. And we've seen in that time female participation double. So we have the metrics, we know they're trending in the right way. So that commitment meant making some tough decisions. It's hard in the beginning. You know, there's some tokenism in the beginning, and for a leader, those are hard decisions to make. But you gotta start somewhere, and you change the system. You know, you're hearing the buzzword of systemic racism, systemic problems in your organization, and there's hard decisions in the beginning that you have to make to change how those systems work. So we did that, you know, 6 or 7 years ago now. And you do it through partnerships and allyships. Like we partner with women in engineering, we partner with women in computer science to find these people, these students, you know, and partnerships are a real big part of it, because you can't do it on your own. And I just think that these women's groups, like at Technichat, if you don't exist, the rest of us can't get the work done. So those are really, partnerships are really important. Tough decision making is really important. I think listening to, you know, our students, you know, we got some pushback in the beginning from actually some STEM students. I think one of them was one of the founders of Technichat, and she said, you know, I don't want to learn just in a room full of women. You know, I want to learn from others. And we hear that. And so, you know, it's not like everything we're offering is only for women, or, you know, and women can't do this and men can't do that. You know, so it's a balance of, you know, from our world is programming. So what are we, you know, how are we balancing that out? We've learned from that as well. And I think just learning from, you know, your stakeholders, what they're willing to fund. You know, there's funding out there, there's grants available to us to fund this type of programming that wasn't around probably 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. So we're able to move the needle in that way, at least in our world.
So
I have not been.
Sorry, Christina, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I have not been being on the engineering side. You know, it's not my day-to-day position to be working on this, but the things that I've observed and seen actually happening are actually pretty good. I mean, we've always been a pretty diverse company. I started there originally in 2012, so and I left for about 1.5 years. So I've seen a lot of how things have changed and how they haven't in some cases. And one nice way they haven't is that we already started out with a pretty diverse group of people, not crazy diverse, like nothing you brag about numbers wise, but there weren't, I don't think, a lot of road bumps internally to actually, you know, trying to increase diversity. So once those movements started getting off the ground and we started getting into things like, one big thing that we're working on right now is recruiting. And that's why we're attending conferences like this, for example, to make sure that we can actually recruit and hopefully report the numbers afterwards. One of my favorite tactics that I've seen a few different companies report on is doing just that, is actually, you know, committing to numbers, the proportions of various minorities and actually getting those numbers and then reporting on the results. You know, there's a huge emphasis where I am of, you know, metrics. And sometimes I am a little skeptical of that, but in this case, I don't actually know of a better way, especially when we're talking about big numbers. We're not talking about a token percentage. We're talking about something that's measurable and useful, even if, you know, it's not as organic as one would like.
Yeah, I think for us, one, our senior leadership, the whole way up to our management group and board of directors, supports diversity efforts and inclusion and being your authentic self at work. I think that's helpful. I think it has to be not only a top down, but a bottom up, and we meet in the middle. So there is more opportunities for voices to be heard. In our organization, I think people are coming to the table. We support diversity resource groups. I think we have almost 30 of them at this point, which range from Pride through African American, through OLA, which is our Hispanic, Latino resource group. I feel as if it's supported across the bank. And I will say that certainly our TDPs are actively involved in driving some of those activities, not only in tech, but across the bank. They're very focused on social impact and being your authentic self and offering opportunities for folks to engage in diversity resource groups. And you don't have to necessarily, one of the things I like about our resource groups is you can join as many of those resource groups as you like. It's really about participating and coming to the table and supporting others. So I agree. I think it's something where it takes a village, for lack of a better term, and it really needs to be a collective partnership, not only internally with your organization, but externally as well.
I definitely agree. And, you know, just on this topic, I think there are some companies that exist that sort of just have diversity and inclusion as buzzwords. You know, there's some people that kind of just like, they want to like play the game or put on the face, but don't really truly at heart believe in that or like want to invest in that. So kind of going off of that idea, we had a question in the chat. What are things to look for in companies or job postings if you want to work for someone who truly values diversity and inclusion and isn't just saying it to say it? So I guess like what are some indicators of a company that really does value that and aren't just, you know, putting on the face?
That's a great question. And you're right. I mean, anybody can put anything on their website. I personally, when we're interviewing, we have candidates speak to people internally, right? Like our TDPs, they speak to us, they can speak to other folks within the organization. We actually engage them with our diversity resource groups to hear from them directly of what are some of the initiatives that we're focused on, what are some of the accomplishments, what is the support like. One thing we invest heavily in is transparency and being candid. And so we encourage that with our TDPs, and we encourage that with anybody who is interfacing with our candidates. But I think just looking at the history of the organization, do some research. Don't only look at their website, right? Go out, see if you can connect on LinkedIn with folks that maybe work there or have worked there, or look at your other networking opportunities. I think the more prepared you are, the better you'll represent yourself if you do decide to interview, and ask candid questions, very candid questions.
I absolutely agree with that. And I know that there is the problem of getting the interview. So, I mean, I actually I have not bothered doing that research before the interview because, you know, that would have been a lot of extra time. And that very much depends on your position, like what kind of position you're looking for at the level, you know, whether you're going to be getting more of that. But remember, when you're interviewing, you're also interviewing them, even if you're not necessarily in that position officially. You can ask all kinds of questions, ask questions that will tell you small things, ask, you know, how do you know if you have a diverse company here? And if they have really good answers that aren't just canned PR answers, that's really good. If they don't have good answers, then do they care? You know, and also if you're able to talk to someone who actually works there off the record, especially someone who is some kind of minority, I think that's a huge boon because they're more likely to be able to at least give you indicators. And if they're a really strong proponent and that seems to hold true, that's actually a really good indicator because I think it's, for the most part, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who actually identifies as one of the minorities or is intersectional or whatever and doesn't actually, you know, is going to actually really cheer on their company if it's not letting them be their authentic self.
I don't have much to add to that because that was really good advice. But I would say just for those of you who are students, work your alumni network. Like ask, you know, if you see an alum there, reach out to them on LinkedIn, even if you don't know them, and just say, hey, you know, I really want to be with an organization that's committed to authenticity or whatever is important to you. But definitely, you know, if you're not confident enough to ask in the interview, which you should be, you know, find other ways to figure it out when you're doing your research. And then also asking the Career Center, that could be another way to figure it out as well. But the research part of it is kind of on you to figure that out if it's authentic and real or not.
And I definitely think a lot of this comes with time and experience too, you know, knowing how to navigate that because, you know, at the beginning of your tech career, it's just sort of like, oh, I'll take any job I can get. Like, I'm sort of in that phase right now, you know, I'm like kind of new to it. I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll take any experience. It's all valuable. But I think as you grow older and you develop more skills on your own and you have more trust and belief in your skills, then you're like, well, you know, my output is valuable. I don't just want to be contributing to a company that doesn't actually believe in what I stand for. So I think that definitely does get better with time in your own career as well.
May I add real quick?
Yeah, of course.
I also want to emphasize, it's really okay if you just have to take a job and keep your head down to start with to put food on the table. There is nothing wrong with that. That is not on you.
Absolutely. Definitely. So when we've talked about sort of, the companies that sort of have a fake claim to diversity and inclusion. So sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum, how do you respond to people that outrightly discredit diversity efforts? People that might not understand why they're useful, or they just kind of shut them down? Because I feel like we've all had those experiences in conversation or in action.
Well, this day and age, I mean, that's sort of, that would be a scary premise to be up against as a young person. So I don't envy you in that. I think that you've got to empower yourself, and you've got to learn about it. Like, you've got to know that you need allies in this, and they don't all look like you. And so, figuring out who you can talk to about it within the organization, who's going to be an ally for this to figure out the gnarly problems. I think that there's probably organizations who are ignoring this, and it's not part of their strategic mission. And if that's part of, like Christina said, you've got to get a job in the beginning, and maybe you don't love that about the organization, but it's your first job, and you won't do that the next time around because you'll have experience. But I think that if you can avoid those types of organizations, great. If you can't find allies within the organization that might help you understand it and change it. Again, remember, those allies may not be female. Some of them may be males, and that's okay. But I would say question it, challenge it as much as you can as an entry-level employee. But yeah, I think that most of these top-tier organizations should have some sort of commitment to it, but maybe Lori or Christina can
we
speak
do.
to that.
And Christina will probably speak to Wayfair as well. I'm going to be completely honest. As someone who openly didn't support diversity, was in any way disrespectful, or did not uphold the values of our organization, I doubt you would see them very long. They just don't fit. So, I mean, unfortunately, there are some people in this world that you can never change. And to put your efforts towards trying is a complete waste of your valuable time. So don't, right? You have to empower yourself, and there are plenty of allies out there that will continue to support and enable and empower you. You do not need those types of individuals. So when I meet those folks, and I have in personal and in work environments, I just walk away.
Yeah, I can more or less agree with that when you are able to. Same thing for Wayfair. I don't think there's room for that where we are now, and there actually hasn't been for some time, which is really nice. Even if there were fewer overt initiatives happening in prior years, and I'm talking several years ago, then that's absolutely a thing. And I think also, if you end up in a position where you need to refute that stance for whatever reason, maybe the company isn't quite as isn't quite as aligned on culture, having, I would say, probably in tech in particular, having data lined up and ready for you to use as arguments is probably the best you're going to do. I mean, normally that's not a tactic I would use in personal life, because engineers, think a little bit differently than everyone else does when it comes to this stuff. But actually, being able to say, here is why this works. And these companies have proved this over and over again, that they are getting better results this way. In a technical environment, hopefully the other person isn't going to have much they're going to be able to say to you.
Right. Yeah, and I think in any organization, there's a clear path of escalation. If the end of it, if you do are forced in your work environment to interact with somebody who is simply just disrespectful or does not align with the core mission and vision and of the company, we have clear lines of escalation to report those things anonymously and have them addressed. And so you really, I'm hoping now, as you're going to be starting your career, some of you starting a little bit sooner than others, I really feel like you are really in a great position as you enter the workforce.
Agreed.
Yeah, hopefully that provides all of us with hope in this fact. And even if there are, some factors that might play into this, there are definitely systems in place to make sure that we as individuals aren't mistreated or, aren't disrespected, and that our work is actually valued and appreciated. So that's good. We had a couple of questions in the chat that were sort of similar or getting at the similar idea. So it was, what advice do you have for women getting started in their careers, or transitioning from a non-tech career to a technical one, or freshmen in high school, just getting started overall?
So I've been reading all of the questions about women who are in certainly majors that are, the majority are men. I'm hoping it's not going to be that way for long. Like, I really see more and more women. Used to be like 9% of women were in like tech majors, STEM majors. Now it's like 24%. So I think the more brave women that lean in, the more that's just going to become less and less relevant. So, but for those folks that are still dealing with it, I think it takes a lot of courage and bravery, right, to move into a major that is dominated, right, by men. But I'm going to tell you this: women are changing the way that the world looks at technology. They are changing everything about how we perceive what a technologist is and what they should be. And so just keep charging forward, right? Because it's getting better. I'm so excited because when I started in tech, trust me, it was a small amount of women, a lot of old school men, and they didn't get it, right? We were still administrative type roles. We couldn't possibly be technologists. So I'm really excited about seeing more and more women in this field, and what you're doing and what you're demonstrating to the world is just outstanding. So I keep moving forward.
Yeah, I would agree. I hope things are already better, but I hope by the time anyone in this room gets to where I am, who's right now in college, this is hopefully going to be a done discussion. But the only way to do that is to keep charging forward, as Lori says.
Yeah, and I would say this, the systems are changing. And so hopefully someone said they were entering in 2024, hopefully the issue won't be so bad for you, because the systems are changing within elementary, middle, and high school. And if they have to change there before they can change in college, it's just sort of part of how the system works. But I would say one thing you could think about for all y'all, I see all these comments about being only 2 or 3 women in your whole major. That's where you got to look for clubs. You got to look for extracurriculars. You've got to join the Technichat team, there's some things that until it gets better within the major, you as a student can elect into these things outside of the major to find those women. Because like Lori and Christina said, if you're not confident, you don't value your skills when you leave, it'll be harder. So find it outside the major if you can.
Absolutely. And actually, speaking to my experience, I graduated in, oh God, when did I graduate? 2009, I want to say. Yeah, 2009 sounds right. And there was nothing like this. Like, there was no Technichat. There was none of these things. So, I mean, yeah, they're not handed to you, unfortunately, or not shown to you, I want to say. It's not something, but now that you're here, they exist. And that's great. Go find them.
Yeah, definitely. I can also say from the student perspective, every single piece of advice that they gave is absolutely true. The past 2 years have been me sort of like working my way into the tech space, because I actually didn't do any computer science or join any of those clubs or anything until I got to college. So I was definitely intimidated by it. I was like, wow, especially at UMD, which is kind of a tech school. So I was like, this is definitely like not a subtle jump into the tech world, but definitely having those communities and also just kind of sticking through it, like knowing that the first maybe year is going to be difficult, but you just kind of have to have that grit and have that perseverance to just keep on with it. Eventually it does get easier, and even better than easier, it gets more fulfilling. You are able to see that you're actually making impacts and you're actually growing as a person, which is definitely so valuable. Sort of in a similar train of thought, we have the question: how can hackers or participants help promote diversity and inclusion initiatives in their own communities? So not just attending ones that already exist, but how can we really take that and implement that on a personal level?
I think there actually can be in mixed groups a lot of things you can do to help boost other voices, especially, like me, I'm, obviously pass is pretty privileged pretty easily. So, you know, if I like to make sure that quieter people, and often quieter people are visibly some kind of minority, will to get the chance to speak. And sometimes, you know, maybe if you're a little shyer, you might say something in chat and just, you know, if no one actually picks up on it, just let it slide away. But if you're the person who's comfortable speaking, say something, say so-and-so has a question, so-and-so has something to add to this. You know, look around you as much as you're participating in whatever you are participating in, and make sure that everyone's getting the airtime that they're looking for. And if you notice that there's a whole contingent of people not saying anything, or half the group is not saying anything, maybe find out why. There could be a really good reason for it. And, you know, maybe they're just people who are really there and want to lurk, and that's also okay. Like, you can get a lot of other things that way, but if people want to or are comfortable at all participating, they should be able to. And that's sometimes the biggest first barrier, I think.
I think also in some of these settings, you have to look at how you're participating, because a lot of the things we do in the classroom or with young people is we make them, you know, we give them a prompt, or we have a topic, and we make them, you know, write down their ideas first, because some people don't, especially women, don't have the confidence to raise the hand. And so, you know, we do sticky, you write it down, you have to walk up and put it here, you have to walk up and put it there. So sometimes the operations of how you're in your world have to be changed before you can get those people to engage. And women are really good operators. Like Lori said, they got stuck there for many years in the career world because they're good at it. But don't ignore it, you know, do the other things, but say, like, how could I, you know, change how we operate this club or this major, or, you know, this thing in high school that I might get more different people to elect into it. And something as simple as saying, we're not going to speak first, we're going to write down ideas first, could be an idea.
Yep, you know, it's interesting. I see a lot of different cohorts in like different meetups and just in various forums. But I think if you don't have a student club that does bring women together, or bring like individuals, right, into a space that gives them a voice, I feel like that's an opportunity, right? Start that. Women in computing, women in tech, some of those groups that we've worked with, the student clubs that we've worked with across the different universities, I'm really impressed with what they do. And they get out in their communities, right, collectively. They sponsor different events, whether it be coding boot camps for kids in elementary school or middle school. I really feel like they're reaching back into their communities and just elevating their voice.
It's funny that we mentioned that, because we actually had a question in the chat that said, I started a club at my high school, Women in STEM. Any advice for me to run it? So I know you already started talking about that, but any more specific advice?
Yes, a little bit. So how many, can I get actually answers if I have a question? Like, how many individuals are in the club?
Whoever asked the question, if you want to speak up in chat and let us know a little bit more about what it's looking like.
Okay, so if let's say you have a smaller group, you're trying to build, how are you communicating that this club exists, right? Is it strictly on one platform? Are you using social media? Is there different ways? So I think, one, you have to get your voice heard. You have to make sure people know that this is an option for them. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. You could host like a virtual event. And someday we'll all be back together, right? We'll sit in person, but you could host like virtual game nights, or just virtual, any way to get people to come and participate and learn more about what you're doing and how you're doing it. I think there's always ways to market these types of things. And I have to be honest, I feel like you are far more equipped from a social media perspective than even I am. I learn new things every day. So I would just think about that. Host some events, talk about what you're doing, what it means to be part of this club. And I'll be honest, the more you're in your community, the more people are going to have that visibility to some of the changes you're making.
Yep, and we had that organizer private message me and say that they have about 30 people. They currently have an Instagram and they're going to start a website, and they're using Remind. And also they're going to ask teachers to promote it throughout the school. So those are some of the steps that they're taking.
That's perfect. Absolutely get your students, or you have your students, have your teachers help you promote it. But the 30 is a good number. I
Definitely.
think that's a great
Agreed.
number.
I
Another
also,
thing-
one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, one thing I might add from a much more general perspective, when I had like many informal, like kind of friend-ish oriented leadership positions. And if you can find either a co-leader or a second in command, for lack of a better term, to help you, that's going to be huge, because, you know, these there's always more to do than you expect when you're in a leadership position. And you're always also going to have to, more or less depending on the type of group and what you're trying to accomplish, you may have to do a lot of people wrangling, for example. You know, say you need a certain number of people to show up or an activity is not viable. That is extra time, and it's extra frustration if you're someone who shows up on time and is, you know, always shows up when they say they're going to show up. And, you know, there's an element of, we call it sometimes real life happens, especially with all the virtual, everything's virtual now. You know, sometimes there's something you want to attend virtually and something that is, you know, taking your attention in real life. And it's a lot easier to get distracted by the real life thing this way. So you have to be constantly communicating, as well as actually planning any content that you might be doing. Like, there's so much to do. If you can find help of any kind, rotating help, maybe have like a help position that once a meeting, someone, you know, delegate actually. And I think Holly might have spoken to this. You know, I'm sorry if it was Lori, I forget, but yeah, absolutely delegate, absolutely get help, and know that that's going to get other people engaged a lot more too.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant, right, Christine? I mean, it seems like common sense, but not everybody thinks about it that way, right? You're the leader of something and you're trying to get people to engage and participate. I do think you have to have some roles and responsibilities, right? In a group of 30 people, being able to assign and delegate, let somebody own something and drive something, and then come back and talk about the progress that's being made, versus the leader trying to take everything on, which Holly and I talked about earlier, which women do. So don't feel bad if you have to ask for help. I think that's just part of having this broader group of people.
Yeah, and I think that for those of you trying to grow groups, one thing we've learned and we know is representation matters. So one of the first changes we made was we looked at the syllabi for some of our faculty, or if you're in high school, your teachers, and all of the class speakers look the same. And so it was sort of a problem where we said, you know, we're not getting a lot of traction in the beginning with our Ladies First program, but you're also, you know, only bringing in class speakers who are male and have been successful. Bring in some females. Can you help us out here? So I think it's also you all making sure that you're putting, you know, strong non-binary, underrepresented, you know, people with all kinds of, you know, things that make them different in front of your student bodies. Asking your teachers to do it could be one way to do it as well. And I think don't ignore, especially where you are in life, don't ignore the fun. So for those of you trying to grow your groups, you know, we do things to have fun together, not just learn together. So if there's ways you could enact that, it could help you get some more momentum.
And also, you know, don't neglect I don't want to say the soft skills, because it's probably not so much about skills, but talking about, you know, things that are not necessarily purely a tech thing, but also experiential.
Yeah, good advice.
So hopefully the leaders of our orgs now have so much, like a wealth of advice to take in and continue organizing. And just know that, like, already the fact that you are leading an initiative to bring women together in computing, that's like, you know, already enough. You know, you're just starting off and you're just going to grow more and more and bring so many people together over that common cause, which is great. I also wanted to touch on some of the comments that I've been seeing in the chat. So this is a question. What about for those of us who are non-binary or have disabilities? How do I approach the topic of pronouns in the workplace, or, you know, just getting into the workplace at all?
I think sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think one thing that we've asked our students to do is to add their pronouns to their signatures. That's like just an action you can do if that's important to you, you've got to take action. And that's just one simple thing that you can do. Because I've met with some non-binary students last spring who said they didn't feel confident in doing that. And so I said, okay, what is the action you feel confident in doing? Because you have to empower yourself first. And maybe it's not adding them to your LinkedIn or to your email signature, but you have to find something that you could do and you feel confident in doing. Find a friend to maybe do it with you, or a classmate. You know, but there is some action you have to empower yourself to do. And I think Lori and Christina maybe should talk about that from maybe an HR perspective, because I'm in a community where we welcome this in every way, shape, and form. But maybe there's more of an HR angle that they should be looking at. I don't know.
Yep. Christine, if you want to go ahead and speak to that from Wayfair, then I'll talk about what we do at M&T.
Sure. I mean, as far as I know, first of all, in an interview before you were hired, even after you're hired, your identity and your disabilities are no one's business but your own in the end. And if you're not comfortable revealing that for any reason, that is absolutely fine. You do not have to. If on the other hand, you're someone who, you know, wants to be as outwardly authentic as possible and is much more comfortable that way, navigating that, you probably still don't want to do it in the interview. From what I understand, again, I'm not in HR. So this is, from what I understand, you actually can make things harder for the company if you give them too much information that they're not actually supposed to have when making hiring decisions. It can be a legal issue. But once you get there, especially if you're in a company where I am pretty confident you can walk into Wayfair and say, in my case, I actually went from dating a man to dating a woman, and I was comfortable enough to just be able to drop it casually in a conversation. And that's a huge thing. And I have no illusions that it's that way elsewhere. If you are finding that you're in, I can speak most specifically to being queer and to disabilities because my partner is disabled. Find allies, I think, is probably the best thing you can do once you get there, if it's not outwardly obvious. And it won't be, you don't know what other people are going through. You don't know what disabilities other people have. A lot of them, especially virtually, you're never going to know. You might find out that someone is dealing with something either kind of minor but still impactful, or something impactful. Sorry, not a fan of that word. That has a huge impact on their lives. Or, they could be dealing with something huge. And this extends outside of even disabilities to things like caretaking. Like, you don't know what that other person is dealing with. But you also, this means that there are a lot more people out there than you think who can support you and who are having similar experiences and similar problems. And finding them can be a bit of a challenge. Like I said, from my perspective as a partner, like, I'm absolutely here. I want to help. Like, I want to be, I feel, like I have both the experience and the leverage to try to be that kind of ally, because it almost bleeds over into actually being involved because of the depth of it. So that's, yeah, I think it's great that everyone is asking these questions, because it is really important going forward, but definitely make sure, I would make sure you have, like, first and foremost, especially in interviews, the legal side covered, that you're not making things more difficult for them, because they want to hire you. Ultimately, companies want to hire good engineers, and you're probably one of them.
Sure, and I think our role is to create an environment where everybody feels comfortable being their authentic self. And I feel that we have done an exceptional job of doing that at M&T. I feel we have the right resources in place. You have allies across the bank. To me, no one should. One, it takes a tremendous amount of bravery to do what I have watched some people come forward with. I can't even imagine what it takes to sit in a group of people and explain their personal life the way they do, throwing it on the table. I think that we do a great job of educating others how to be respectful, in how to make everybody feel comfortable and confident in our environment. I hope that it sounds as if Wayfair has created a very similar environment. I know it's different in universities than it is in organizations. There's a tremendous amount of training and education, and we just kicked off something that are more small, intimate groups referred to as daring discussions. where we put everything on the table. It is candid and honest and transparent, and it is respectful and constructive. And everybody walks in that room as themselves. And so I feel that we've done a great job. I think there's some companies that are doing amazing things. I think some are coming along. But I will say this, it takes a lot of courage to be your authentic self in your work environment and risk being judged. But I will say I feel we've done a great job of making folks feel comfortable. Everybody. It doesn't matter who you are.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your insightful responses. And I also I love seeing the chat because everyone's just being so honest and open and just themselves, which is so great to see. I feel like we don't have enough of that in the world right now, but it's great that we have this community that we can, just be transparent. I think we probably have time for just like one or two wrap-up questions. So one that I wanted to ask, this is just kind of like a fun little one, is that what are a few of your qualities that you think have gotten you to where you are today? Your positive qualities, just like a self-celebration moment. Would you all like to mention a few? This might be
we're all women, so none of us are going to jump in first, right?
Listening to
right? Okay.
Inclusion.
Sounds about right.
What do you mean celebration moment?
It's just an informal term that I use, but I think it's important, like as women and non-binary people, that we, take credit for our values and our assets. So that's why I just wanted to ask this question to the panelists and, see what they think their characteristics are that have gotten them and made them successful in tech.
So I know about myself that I am very persistent. I am dogged. I always have been since I was very young, and that has been celebrated throughout my career. And I know that about myself. I know that if someone presents a problem to me on my leadership team, that they're giving it to me because they know it'll get solved. I'll figure out a way. But there's other things I'm not so good at. So, I do celebrate that about myself. And, there's some skills that I've worked really hard. Like I'm not a quant person. I'm more of a qualitative person. And so I've worked really hard on my quantitative skills. And finally, I can feel confident in saying those are strong and that I can, submit my budgets and, review a P&L and do some diligence on a company and feel on the quantitative side and feel good at it. So I would say, I feel, I just know myself now. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm bad at. It's hard in the beginning, but just pay attention when you have these reviews that you're going to have, throughout your career. And what are they constantly saying about you? Like I said, they like, Holly, you really get the job done, and you just figure out how to leverage that skill or what you're good at to make your career path go the way you want it to go.
I've actually been now ruminating on this one because I have been in an interesting position where over the past couple of years, I realized I almost certainly have ADD, and everyone who I've talked about in my life is like, excuse my language, no shit, Sherlock. So, what I think that's actually been a huge part of it. But if you want to remove that, because, it's as much a blessing as it is a curse in some ways, I think attitude is probably the big thing, especially when interacting with other people. And it really trying to be empathetic and have the imagination to understand that, if you're trying to engage with someone and it's not working for whatever reason, whether you're just trying to have a conversation and they don't seem into it, or you're trying to get something done and you can't get what you need out of them, usually just a small technical resource or something, trying to make sure that you assume good intention to start with. And this is all stuff we're talking about now is kind of a matter of course, which is really interesting to me. And realizing I've been doing it all this time, but I honestly think it's because I'm kind of conflict averse. Like I really don't want to have to go fight for something if I can get it some other way. And that fortunately means that I've had to get very creative with the problem solving and how to get things other ways when I'm trying to avoid that direct route because it doesn't seem like the best path.
I think for me, I'm very good at pivoting, right? So when the world changes, I change. I've always been able to come up with new creative ways to do things that we've done before, but do them differently or do them better or do them faster or smarter, whatever it may be. And I feel like that's helped me keep moving forward. I also am never afraid to try something new. To be completely honest, when they said, Laurie, do you want to take over talent and build this technology development program and internship? And I was like, well, okay, I don't know anything about that, but sure, I could do that. And I feel like you always have to be okay trying new things, right? And believe in yourself that you can do it, even though in the back of your brain, there's that little voice that keeps saying, oh, you're probably not qualified. Just keep doing it. It's a great way to learn new things. It expands your soft skills, right? Those behaviors and competencies that are important, but it also allows you to gain other valuable knowledge along the way. So just be comfortable with change and be comfortable trying things you've never done before.
I think a corollary to that too is also understand that whenever you're making decisions, there is no one right decision. You're picking between trade-offs, because I've seen a lot of arguments that didn't have to go on for a long time because everybody assumed that their own position was the correct position. But if you actually start to talk about it in terms of trade-offs, you're picking which set of trade-offs you're taking, and that's going to get you a lot farther.
Okay, thank you so much for your insight on this past question and just all of the questions overall. If everyone can just give like a virtual hand to our panelists, I think there's a react that you can press that gives a round of applause. So if you have that, feel free to use it. But I do want to respect everyone's time. So thank you for attending this workshop. I hope that you learned a lot and that you were able to express yourself and just get a lot of strength and inspiration from this community. And I hope you continue enjoying your rest of Technica.
Yep, thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Yes, good luck. Thank you. Bye.
Good luck. Thank you.
Bye.